You're listening to The Higher Ed Marketer, a podcast geared towards marketing professionals in higher education. This show will tackle all sorts of questions related to student recruitment, donor relations, marketing trends, new technologies, and so much more. If you're looking for conversations centered around where the industry is going, this podcast is for you. Let's get into the show.
Welcome to the Higher Ed Marketer Podcast. I'm Troy Singer with my co-host and fantasy football umpire, Bart Kaler. And today we are going to interview Alex Boylan. He is the co-founder and host of The College Tour, a wonderful show that you can get on many different platforms that highlights a different college each week.
This is a great episode. If you don't recognize Alex's name, you'll certainly maybe recognize his voice. He was the host of CBS's Amazing Race. And also many of the people on the team come from the background of reality TV like Survivor and several of the other ones. So I recognized Alex immediately when I watched the first episode. And I'm fascinated with this concept of having a television show with multiple seasons and multiple episodes focused entirely on higher education and specifically on the college tour. I love his vision and his passion and his mission to get the college tour in the hands of every prospective college student around the world. And I think this is a great conversation about not only the idea behind the college tour and what that's doing and how they're doing it, but also just some key takeaways, how you can take some of these ideas and actually start to implement them into your higher ed marketing.
Yes, I think Alex presents how to best authentically tell the story of your campus. And without further ado, let's get into the conversation with Alex Boylan. Please welcome Alex Boylan, the co-founder and host of the College Tour series, to the Higher Ed Marketer Podcast. Alex, thank you for joining.
Troy, Bart, thank you so much for having me. What a joy. This is going to be fun.
You know, we talk to a lot of dynamic people, but we really don't talk to a lot of famous people that we would consider TV stars. So we're excited to talk to you and let everyone know about the wonderful series that you have, the College Tour. If you could, tell us a little bit about your background before we get into what the show is all about.
Well, thank you. I don't know about famous, but, this is fun. So my background, I've been in the television space for a little about 20 years ago. I was international business major, was in the business world, and was, if you can believe it, 20 years ago, was cast on the second season of The Amazing Race and was very blessed to end up winning that series. And most importantly during that was I got this inside look in the world of television, and I loved every single second of it. I couldn't stop talking to the producers. I can still hear the CBS producer saying, "Hey, Alex, stop asking questions about our job. You're supposed to be a contestant on The Amazing Race." So I fell in love with the business and, spent 20 years working really hard to become successful at it. And after that, I started off hosting different cooking and travel shows, and then created Around the World for Free, which is the first online interactive show where I had to circumnavigate the globe for free and just have done, I've probably filmed in 60, 65 countries around the world. So I've had an amazingly blessed career just telling stories around the planet and couldn't be more excited. I myself, along with the people that are behind this, Lisa Hennessy, Burton Roberts, Mike Murray, and some of those people, Lisa worked on the biggest shows in the world and helped create some of the biggest franchises like Survivor, etc. We all say we are humbled by what's happening with the College Tour. It's been an absolute joy and can't wait to talk more about it.
Bart and I are both fans, and we believe that our listeners would gain some insight and some pointers from how you navigate the College Tour, the episodes where you highlight different colleges. If you would, how did that idea come about?
Yeah. So big picture, for the audience, each episode of the College Tour tells the story of a different college campus. So every episode is one institution. And what's the best part about this is we tell that story through the lens of students. So the idea sprung on me before, like maybe 6 months to a year before COVID. My niece, Isabel Palnazic, she's from Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, middle American family, middle class. And all of a sudden she was looking at college campuses and deciding where to go. Her mom, my older sister, Andrea, gave her one trip. They go, Isabel, you got one trip to go look at schools. And she chose to come out to see me in the city of Los Angeles here. And I had so much fun taking her around to Loyola Marymount, UCLA, USC, all these different schools. Well, while she was here, she's like, Uncle Alex, I want to go check out some schools in Texas. I want to check out some schools in New York and many other states. And I can still hear my older sister. She's like, what do you think? We're made of money. We can't afford to buy you all around. This is it, Isabel. This is all you have. And so it wasn't long after she was here when COVID hit. So my niece had two variables against her. One was she did not have the finances to travel across the country. And that is like 99.9% of probably the students that are out there, high school students out there. And then knocking on top of that, she's that junior, senior class that's rolling into college during this massive pandemic. So pretty much the country shut down. So two variables really stopped her journey. And so I sat back with her online and spent some time. I was having so much fun thinking back to my college and how did I figure out where to go to school. And it was during that process. I mean, all these institutions do an amazing job of marketing and telling their stories, but it's all different. You can go to one person's website and there's super high-end glossy commercials. You can go to another institution and it's user-generated content. And so as an outsider, I have zero experience in the education space. As I'm trying to navigate this with my niece and helping her try to find her tribe and her vibe and where's the best place for her, the light bulb went off. Higher education needs its own TV series, something that is formatted, that is clean, something that is delivered in a way that someone who's older, like myself, that's used to television, where I can sit back on my TV and just watch a half hour, an hour episode, or for the younger generation who's used to being on their mobile devices and want to watch it in bite size. And so all those variables came together to say, let's create this idea and let's bring this to market. And it's just been an absolute joy. Who would have thought, if you asked me when the idea came about, because I've never created, and I've created a lot of different shows. I've never created anything that stemmed from a problem. This is the first time that's ever happened. That was, this is a problem that's out there, and we need to make this to serve those people and everyone who's going through that same problem.
That's really exciting. Thanks, Alex. And I have to say that I think the place that I discovered the college tour is we had Jamie Hunt from Miami University of Ohio on episode 2. And so we were connected on LinkedIn and I was seeing her posts and I saw, we're recording the college tour, on campus this week. And every day she kept having these pictures and these posts. And so I did a quick search and I came across Amazon Prime and saw the episodes and saw it on there. I think it was actually at home, and I think I turned on my TV and pulled up Amazon and looked at it and watched a couple episodes. And I was just kind of flabbergasted. I was like, this is so cool. This is something that higher ed has needed. As you said, they've needed an episodic, television show that would highlight the biggest issue. And I've talked to so many marketing teams on campuses, and I'm sure you've heard this too, Alex, is, boy, if we could just get the students on campus, then we're going to get them. Then they're going to be able to come. And I think this is just another modality of allowing students and families to get on campus. Is that kind of what you're discovering when you talk to these teams?
Couldn't agree more. I mean, it's interesting. The average college trip, I believe, if it's outside of your region, is around $2,000, $2,500-ish. And so we want students as well as their parents to be able to sit back and travel across the country and be able to get a really good sense of what this institution is about. And we have some fun stories. I mean, there's still going to be hope. I think we're like a bridge between I'm interested. I've learned about this university. I've heard about this university. Let me learn a little bit more. And then if I can, maybe I'll go, because I was just back at TCU, Texas Christian University, a few months ago speaking, and their marketing team, where they go, we have people that show up, like students that show up and say, we're from San Diego. We saw the college tour episode and that's why we're here. So that's pretty fun. So I think we're on a base level. No one has to go anywhere from their cell phone and their television set to watch and learn. And those that have the means that can possibly, maybe that helps them make that extra step to go on campus.
I think that's great. And even as I was reviewing some of the episodes, and you guys are, I think, coming up on season 4, as I go through those episodes, there's a lot of familiar names, Miami of Ohio and some of those other ones, but there were a lot of names, even myself being in the higher ed marketing space. It's a lot of schools that I was introduced for the first time through the college tour. And I found that fascinating because I think sometimes, like you just said, someone shows up at a school that might not have even known about them other than this college tour TV show.
Absolutely. We've been, I love to sit back and say, oh, we're all geniuses over here at the college tour. But I think we just happen to be, we're storytellers. We had a good idea and all of a sudden it just hit right timing, the right project, the right team behind it. And it just took off. We constantly, one of the biggest things for us that we thought about early on is, how do you decide on what's going to be part of season 1 and how do you roll this all out? The biggest thing for us was just diversification. That was probably internally, is knowing that we can't just make this the big state schools or just X schools in this region. We really, I think, pride ourselves that if you go and watch this, you're going to see, small schools like Fort Lewis College in Durango, Colorado, and Florida Tech in Melbourne, Florida. And you're also going to see the ASUs and the University of Illinois and the UConns and the Baylors of the world. So you're going to get a good mix of all of that. And so we try to make sure that we're peppering in, so everyone's getting a great sense of what's small, medium, large, location, my major, all these things that high schoolers are thinking about and their parents are thinking about, hopefully comes together in an episode and helps them make a better decision.
That's great. And I think that partnering with these different schools, and I think you're close to 40 now, I think that, I'm sure at the very beginning, it was a little bit of a leap of faith to be able to, partner with these schools and be able to, tell their story and let them tell their story and just try to figure that out. Because I think it's so true. And you've said this before, even in our pre-interview, that it's a little different than, a regular network television show that you've kind of got it all mapped out. You know what's going to happen. There's a lot of variables here that are a little different than usual.
It's been a great journey. It's been a great journey because early on, just like anything, everyone's figuring things out. Okay. So this starts this idea, a couple things like early on that we knew, and we kind of we put our stake in the ground. We knew we had to partner with the university. This isn't like the college tour production team comes in and is like, we're going to tell the story of ASU. We have to be working with them because they know their story. They know the heart and soul of their students and what makes them tick and all that. So that's a collaboration from the beginning. Our pre-production process, which is about 2 months, that is a team. Our team working with their team, we become one big family. Our kickoff calls it like, we're now a family and we're going to go through this journey together to get where we need to get to. We could not make this on our own. We need the university because they know it, better than anyone else. And down to the specifics of the authenticity, I'll tell you a funny story because now, the students, the first draft, when we know we're going to talk about athletics and we know this is going to be the student has a great story that's going to tell the story of athletics of that university. First thing we do, we have some bullet points and we have some guides to help them, but we want the first draft from the student, right? It's very important because we need it to be their real story. We need this to be authentic. So that has always been. But episode 1, season 1, I'm going to tell you, sir, we're at Fort Lewis College. First of all, we get there. The fires are happening in Colorado. It's September. This ice storm comes in. Everything that you could think goes wrong is going wrong at the beginning of our pilot. I want to call it our pilot. It's our first episode. And I am heavily involved because we're trying to figure out how this is all going to work. And I'm working with one of the students and all the students that are going to be on camera. And we have bullet points. And I didn't want them to sound memorized. Okay, so I didn't want it to sound rehearsed. So we had these bullet points and we're going to get together. And I'll tell you, very early on, we're like, okay, we need to change scope because students are like, what am I supposed to say? So now it's, we are working with that student. We are getting that student scripted. We are doing media training with that student. That student is like, because I have every episode I watch, I'm so proud of these kids. And I don't even want to call them kids, but these students, because imagine there's a production television crew coming. They have to look into that camera lens and touch that audience and tell and some of these students really open up about their story. And that's not easy. I think back of when I was 19 years old and I'm in college, and all of a sudden I got this camera crew following me around, and they do an amazing job. So we have definitely evolved as a production and grown and learned. And but I'd say, I go back to episode 1. It looks like we're heading into episode 49. I think we're shooting in a few weeks here. And so they look very similar. So the end result we got here, but our approach has definitely evolved and changed throughout it.
Well, and I love the authenticity, because that's one thing that I often kind of talk to my clients about, is that don't try to be something you're not. I mean, so many times I'll hear things like, well, if we were just that school, it'd be so much easier to market. I'm like, well, you're not. You are your school. And if you can tell your distinctive story, that's why people have always come to you. And I think that the idea of letting the students kind of craft that first draft to tell their story, to really kind of get that authenticity out, that's the only way any type of higher ed marketing is going to work, is through that high level of authenticity.
I could not agree more. And it's interesting. Another fun story during the casting process is really interesting, because we go pretty wide with our net. You never know. Sometimes, and it happens most episodes actually, where the university, they think they know, oh, this student's going to be great. But through this process, all these diamonds and these stories pop up that they never know about. Happens all the time. And during the University of Illinois, we're in pre-production. We think we have it all mapped up. And all of a sudden, this student named Mahir comes up, and he's from India. And he tells about this story of him loving to tinker and doing, tinkering with every type of mechanical thing you can think of. He's like taking apart his vacuum cleaner and putting it back together. And his passion, and he found this professor at the University of Illinois who was being very proactive in this device that was going to help with COVID. All these things were happening. His story was so incredible. The university's like, scrap that story that we had. We just want to hear his story. And that's how. And I say that story just to say how real it is. I mean, we as a family, us in the university going through the production process, we discover this stuff together. And what a joy. What a joy, and what a great service to the next generation that will be coming to that university to hear those stories.
That's great. And I think if I recall correctly, in our earlier conversation, you had talked about how important it is for your team, the production team, to be able to empower and actually, as you leave campus, I mean, certainly the students have an amazing opportunity to kind of get some experience, whether it's some of the media training, or whether it's learning how to tell their story, or the confidence that they'll gain in that. But even I would anticipate for the marketing departments, there's a lot of benefit for just being able to hang out with a professional crew who is, whether it's for a couple of days or a week, or even the couple month process. I mean, there's got to be a tremendous amount of learning for each of the schools that are involved as well.
No question about it. To make a great episode of television, it's a lot of work, and there's no getting around that elbow grease that's going to happen on both sides. And I think through the process, we hear it all the time. And like I said, there's 2 months of pre-production. Every week, there's a weekly call going through one thing or another as we build to get ready to be in the field. We film for about a week, and then there's another 2 months in the post-production process to go through that. And they're with us lockstep, every single piece of that. So it's funny, not to bring the University of Illinois back into it, but I can remember we were wrapping up the episode. That was episode 5. And they go, can we keep doing our weekly calls? Because you just get stuck in. So I think, there's great experience throughout that whole process. And I think seeing our process of how we identify stories, help them identify stories, film, get that talent, because it's amazing. There's a lot of content out there, but when you watch the college tour and you watch, a lot of times people are like, early on, I would get questions. People are like, are those actors? And I'm like, no, that's really the student. That is really the student telling their real story. And so a lot of work goes into that. And I think that it's fun for the universities to be part of that process, to learn from that, and then take some of these skills and their team can learn and, make more content. And their marketing teams and their film teams, most of these universities have them. They're always doing stuff. And so whether it's the smaller university that just has a part-time camera guy, which happens, or big ones with massive media teams, no matter who it is, it's a pleasure throughout the process, and everyone's learning throughout it.
That's great for the schools that you're partnering with. But what are some of the learnings that you have acquired that maybe you can share with some of our listeners that they could take away, or maybe reach out to you about being a partner?
Absolutely. Well, I guess it depends. I mean, I've learned so much throughout this. I'm constantly learning. I mean, in the sense of like, what an important decision this is. Just thinking back to like, to me, like, you know, in general, our audience is high schoolers in general, and putting yourself in their shoes and starting to think, because when I chose my university, Jacksonville University, I mean, I was playing soccer, but there wasn't that much out there. I didn't have a lot of help from my parents, and they were great parents. Okay, sounds good. And I went. And I look at it now, there's so much that happens. This is such an important decision for these youngsters. These are going to be your best friends for the rest of your life. Like, this is the location that you're at. Think about that location. You know, that location is going to be part of you for the rest of your life. And so there's people you don't realize. I mean, I think of Jacksonville University. I'm coming from Boston to a small little town, not town, but it's a city, but down in Jacksonville, Florida. And, you know, to this day, I go back to Jacksonville University, you know, because it's part of me. It's part of who I am. It's part of who made me. And so I think and I just think, you know, there's a lot on the marketing side and on the higher education front. There's so much work going on behind the scenes. I mean, the life at a university, and I wish I thought about this when I was in high school. There is so much at your fingertips that you're not, as soon as either you don't go to college or you graduate for college, that is over. Those, you know what I mean? Welcome to the real world. You're like one of all of us. And you're in this semi-bubble with more resources and a massive staff that is here to help guide that journey. And so to me, that is the biggest thing I've like just appreciated in this process, and that I think pushes our whole entire production to make every episode the best it can be, because what an amazing story. These are 4 years of your life. You'll never get them back. That's it. You know, this is 4 years that are going to have a bigger impact. I can't think of another 4 years in someone's life that's going to have a bigger impact on their future than going to college. I don't know about you guys, but like I look at it, it's like, this is big. And so these universities, it's like and the university is a lot different than when I was going. I mean, you should see some of these places now. You go to the options, the residence halls, everything is just at a different bar than when I was going to school. So it's, I think that's the biggest thing. It's just, you know, the people that work in higher education are working their tails off for giving back in a way to help you have an awesome life. And how great is that?
That's great. I really like that. And I think that right there, I love the passion that you just told that, because I think that sometimes as higher ed marketers, I think we often miss the fact of how important it is that what our job is. I mean, we are the ones entrusting to tell those stories and to actually empower the students to make those decisions that are the one of the biggest decisions of their life. And I think that, you know, what you're learning with the college tour, what a lot of the guests that we have here on the podcast talk about is just, you know, the authenticity, the storytelling, using the different tools to tell the story, whether it's video, whether it's, you know, there's all kinds of tools out there. And I think that you've obviously introduced another tool in this idea of having a television episodes. And so I think that it's great. And I guess one of the questions that I would ask is kind of, as we're kind of starting to wrap up here, is certainly not every college in the country is going to be able to partner with the college tour and be featured on there. But one, if they wanted to be a part of that, how might they do that? And two, are there other takeaways that you would say, even if you can't be a part of our television show, here are like 2 or 3 things that you could do that would make a big impact on just the way that you do your marketing for your tour?
Well, I would go into, telling real stories. Telling real stories it sounds uncomplicated. And so to me, but you know, it's hard. And I get that. I think that's what's fun about this is like, myself, Lisa, Bert, and Mike, we're 20 years of telling stories at a very high level. So we're very fine tuned in this approach, in the video format approach. And so, but to me, it's like, find great stories and tell them. That could be written. That could be pictures, whatever it is, finding these stories, because real students at that university doing extraordinary things because of that university, that's gold. And that it's as simple as that. When you find those stories and you tell them in the proper way and get those into the right audience, that's going to move the needle. And I think that's what's been, super fun. It's, I don't want to sit here and toot our horn, but what's cool, I mean, this started as a very simple idea. Let's tell a story that helps prospective students. That was it. That was the college story. That was it's a niece. If you watch the episode at the end, it says inspired by Isabel Palmazic. That's it. But the way we're telling this story is having a massive impact in all kinds of ways. We're just getting the data back from season 1 in a world where everything is kind of down because of COVID and lots of variables. Our universities have been up. I'm not saying that's just because of the college tour. They have great marketing teams. I'm not trying to make that at all. Their applications are up. This is up. Other things are up that they never thought about, like financial giving, alumni engagement, school spirit, all these other recruiting athletes. I was just on the phone call the other day with Utah State University, and they were just talking about how their athletic team is using this content to help recruit in a better way. So there's all these, it's hard to kind of wrap your head around the college tour. We look at it it's an episode of television, simple, but there's all these ways that it's benefiting. So, and I forgot there's a second part to that question.
Well, the second part was if a school was interested in partnering with you and being on the tour, how would that happen?
Well, I appreciate you giving us a plug. That's great. Thecollegetour.com, right there. There's a link right on there, to reach out to one of our partnership team, one of our producers, and someone will be in touch with you very quickly and can walk you through the entire process. And just know, I always say, it's like, we have a great team here. As you can probably tell, I have not had this much fun making a television show, and I don't even, maybe around the world for free, but it's up there with my one or two, like my favorite thing I've ever done. And knowing that we're having an impact. I mean, usually I'm telling fun travel stories. This has meaning. This has purpose. I watch these students, and you talked about early on, Bart, about what they gain out of it, like the actual individual student. One of our students who was at ASU, she just won Miss America, who just won, or Miss Universe. I can't remember which one. Look her up. Yeah, she did the either residence halls, or I can't remember exactly what segment, but it's so, and she didn't win Miss America because of college tour. I'm just saying it's so at all. I'm just saying these students, it's like watching it's amazing. We live in a world right now where I think it's common, right? Every generation thinks the next generation is not as good as their generation, right? I say it's a common thing in general. I can hear my parents be like, "Oh, you're not as tough as we were." I'll tell you what, doing the college tour, I have so much hope for America. It's not even, in the world, it's not even, because they are more caring. They're more conscious about our planet. They're more thoughtful. If you go back to what the average college student was thinking at my university, and it was a great university, I don't know, it was basic. These students are on another level now. So if you need to just feel good in a time where there's a lot of divisiveness and a lot of what's happening, watch the college tour. That is our future right there. And I'll tell you what, if that's what I'm betting on, I think we're going to be in great shape.
Congratulations for creating such a wonderful show, and I would encourage all of our listeners to go out and watch 1 or 2 episodes. Maybe you'll get a couple new partners, but at the very least, I think the formula that you use, others could glean from. It's very successful, and it's very authentic because those stories are coming from the students themselves. Before we wrap up, Alex, are there any last-minute thoughts you would like to share, or maybe a secret or a quick takeaway that could be implemented this afternoon by one of our listeners?
I think it's, have fun and tell stories. At the end of the day, I'm a television producer. I'm a storyteller. My father was a pastor. I come from a line of storytellers. And so to me, it's, you tell a great story, and you can tell a great story in anything. I mean, it's the old adage in Hollywood, it's like you can tell a great story on a napkin, writing a story. So, find a great story and then use what you have around you to your best of your ability to deliver that message to the world. And hopefully you decide to do it with the college tour.
Thank you, Alex, and good luck to you and the series. Again, Bart and I are big fans.
Thank you so much for having me on. This has been a real pleasure.
Thank you. Bart, do you have any closing comments?
Yeah, just to kind of pull out a couple nuggets from our conversation here. I just want to make sure everybody understands being authentic, I think, is the number one rule of anything that you're going to be doing in higher ed marketing. I mean, today we've been talking about a television show. We've been talking about it episodes. the college tour and the authenticity that they're able to capture in those stories. But authentic stories are kind of going to be the heart of any higher ed marketing plan, campaign, whatever you're doing. It's not going to be about, making sure that the features of the biology department are communicated well. It's going to be about the stories that are real and authentic about how the biology department is impacting students' lives and the world. And so I think that's one of the key things that I think that if you don't hear anything else from today, authenticity is going to rule the day and authenticity is going to move the needle. And so I think that there's a lot of ways to do that, a lot of, variable modes of telling stories. In this particular one, it's through a lot of video and things like that. But just keep in mind, authenticity, I think, is it's a key takeaway.
As always, well said, Bart. And that wraps up another episode of the Higher Ed Marketer Podcast. The show is sponsored by Kaler Solutions, an education marketing and branding agency, and by Think Patented, a marketing execution, printing, and mailing provider of outreach campaigns for colleges and universities. On behalf of my co-host, Bart Kaler, I'm Troy Singer. Thank you for joining us.
You've been listening to the Higher Ed Marketer. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player. If you're listening with Apple Podcasts, we'd love for you to leave a quick rating of the show. Simply tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. Until next time.